I'm Daniel, 38, a structural engineer with a knack for spotting cracks in bridges before they collapse. My life with Clara, my wife of 12 years, felt like a well-designed blueprint, stable, predictable, beautiful. We lived in a cedar-shingled house in Portland, Oregon, with our 2 kids, Ethan and Lila. Clara, a graphic designer, filled our home with vibrant sketches and laughter. Her hazel eyes always seemed to hold a secret, but I thought it was just her artist's soul, dreaming in colors I couldn't see. Lately, though, something felt off, like a girder slightly misaligned. Clara started staying late at her studio, claiming deadlines for a big client. Her phone buzzed more often, and she'd tilt the screen away from me, a subtle motion I tried to ignore. I'd ask about her day, and she'd answer in vague strokes, like a painting half-finished. "Just work, Dan," she'd say, her smile tight. I trusted her. I had to. Our marriage was built on that trust, wasn't it? One evening, I found a receipt in her jacket pocket. Dinner for 2 at La Lune, a French bistro we'd never been to together. The date was a Tuesday, when she'd said she was working late. My stomach twisted, but I shoved the paper back, telling myself it was a client meeting. Engineers don't jump to conclusions, we measure, we test. But the crack was there, and I couldn't unsee it. I started noticing other things. A new perfume, sharp and floral, not her usual soft vanilla. She'd hum unfamiliar songs, ones I didn't recognize from our shared playlists. When I touched her, she'd flinch, just for a second, before leaning into me. I wanted to ask, to demand, but fear glued my tongue. What if I was wrong? What if I broke something by doubting her? That night, lying beside her, I stared at the ceiling, tracing the shadows of branches outside. Clara slept, her breathing soft, but I felt a chasm growing between us. I wasn't ready to confront her, not yet. I needed proof, something undeniable. So I decided to watch, to wait, like I would with a bridge on the verge of failing. I'd find the fault line, and then I'd know what to do. The next week, I became a detective in my own life, hating every second of it. I'd always prided myself on logic, on solving problems with precision, but this was messy, human. I checked Clara's phone when she showered, my hands shaking as I scrolled through her messages. Nothing obvious, no heart emojis, no late-night confessions. Just a thread with someone named Jay that was oddly bland, full of "see you soon" and "great ideas today." No context, no clues, but it felt wrong, like a blueprint missing measurements. I started tracking her patterns. She'd leave for her studio at 8 a.m., kiss me distractedly, and return after 7 p.m., sometimes later. I drove by her studio one evening, a converted warehouse with big windows. Her car was there, but the lights were dim. I parked across the street, feeling like a fool, watching shadows move inside. Was she alone? Couldn't tell. Then came the jacket incident. Clara had left her denim coat on the couch, and when I picked it up to hang it, a faint scent hit me. Not her new perfume, but something else, musky, masculine. My chest tightened. I pressed the fabric to my nose, inhaling deeply, trying to place it. It wasn't mine. I'd worn the same cedarwood cologne for years. This was foreign, invasive. I dropped the jacket like it burned. I confronted her that night, casually, over dinner. "Whose cologne is on your jacket?" I asked, stirring my pasta, keeping my voice steady. Her fork froze midair, her eyes flicking to me, then away. "Oh, probably a client," she said, laughing too brightly. "You know how crowded the studio gets." I nodded, but her laugh echoed in my head, hollow. She was lying. I knew it, like I knew the weight a beam could bear before it snapped. The kids were asleep when I sat in my study, staring at my laptop. I'd never been the type to snoop, but desperation clawed at me. I logged into our shared cloud account, digging through her photo backups. Most were sketches, family shots, random landscapes. Then I found it. A blurry image, time-stamped 2 weeks ago, of Clara laughing in a dimly lit booth, a man's arm around her. His face was cut off, but his hand rested on her shoulder, proprietary, intimate. My vision blurred, not with tears, but with rage. I didn't sleep that night. The man's name was Julian, I learned, piecing together fragments. Jay from her texts, a freelance photographer who collaborated on her projects. I found his portfolio online, his smug face staring back. Tousled hair, sharp jaw, the kind of guy who'd charm you while stealing your wallet. His work was bold, provocative, full of nudes and abstract bodies intertwined. Clara had never mentioned him, not once, but her recent sketches echoed his style. Fluid, sensual, unlike her usual clean lines. The betrayal wasn't just physical. It was artistic, intellectual. I found a hidden folder on her laptop labeled Inspo, filled with photos of their collaborations. Not explicit, but close. Clara in a sheer dress, Julian's hands adjusting her pose. Their eyes locked in a way that felt more intimate than any touch. They were creating together, building something that excluded me, a world where I didn't exist. It stung worse than imagining them in bed. She was giving him her mind, her creativity, the parts of her I'd always cherished most. I followed her one Saturday, telling her I was meeting a client. She said she was grabbing coffee with a friend, but I tailed her to a loft downtown, Julian's address from his website. Through the window, I saw them, not touching, but moving in sync, arranging lights for a shoot. She laughed, her head thrown back, freer than I'd seen her in years. I wanted to storm in, to shatter their perfect moment, but I didn't. I needed to understand the depth of this before I acted. That night, I tested her. Saw some cool photography today, I said, showing her Julian's website on my phone. Her face paled, just for a second before she shrugged. Yeah, he's talented. We've worked together a bit. Her voice was too casual, her fingers twitching. I smiled, hiding the storm inside. She didn't know I knew, and that was my power. I started planning, not revenge yet, but something to expose her. I'd always been good at designing systems, bridges, schedules, our life. Now I'd design her downfall, something as intricate as her betrayal. I'd make her feel the weight of what she'd done, not just to me, but to our family, our shared history. The kids deserved better. I deserved better. Revenge didn't come easily to me. I'm not a man of impulse. I calculate, I plan. But the image of Clara and Julian, their private world mocking me, burned behind my eyes. I couldn't confront her yet. Too messy, too final. I wanted her to unravel slowly, to feel the ground shift beneath her as I had. My revenge would be cruel, yes, but elegant, a structure built to collapse at the perfect moment. I started small, planting doubts. I left subtle clues around the house. A receipt for a coffee shop I knew Julian frequented, tucked into her sketchbook. She found it, her brow furrowing, but said nothing. I mentioned a photography exhibit downtown, casually asking if she'd been. No, she lied, her eyes darting away. I nodded, letting her squirm. I wanted her to wonder how much I knew, to feel watched as I had. I dug deeper into Julian's life. His social media was a goldmine. Posts about muses, cryptic captions that screamed Clara. One photo showed a scarf I'd bought her, draped over a chair in his loft. My scarf, my wife, his space. I saved everything, building a dossier. I wasn't sure how I'd use it yet, but evidence was my foundation. Then I turned to her world. Clara's biggest project was a gallery show in 2 months, her first solo exhibit. She'd been pouring her soul into it. Sketches and designs I now knew were tainted by Julian's influence. I contacted the gallery anonymously, posing as a concerned critic, hinting at unoriginality in her work, suggesting similarities to Julian's photography. I didn't accuse outright. I let the seed grow. The curator replied, asking for more details. I smiled, knowing Clara's pride would crumble if her art was questioned. At home, I played the devoted husband, cooking dinners, helping with the kids. But I watched her, noting every flinch, every late-night text. She was slipping, her lies less polished. Once, she left her laptop open, and I saw an email to Julian. Need to slow down. Feeling off. His reply was curt. You're overthinking. We're fine. I wanted to smash the screen, but instead, I copied the email. Patience, I told myself. My revenge would be a slow burn, not a blaze. A month into my silent campaign, Clara started to crack. She was jumpy, snapping at the kids over small things, her sketches piling up unfinished. I'd overhear her on the phone, hushed arguments with Julian, her voice sharp. "I told you, not now." She'd hang up, force a smile when she saw me. I'd ask if she was okay, my tone gentle, my eyes cold. She'd nod, but I saw the fear creeping in. The gallery called her. I learned, questioning her work's inspiration. She came home pale, ranting about jealous competitors. I listened, feigning sympathy, while my anonymous emails to the curator continued, each one chipping at her confidence. I suggested she take a break, maybe cancel the show. "No way," she snapped, her eyes fierce. "This is my chance." I nodded, knowing I'd make that chance her undoing. I escalated my plan. I hired a private investigator, a discreet woman named Mara, to tail Julian. She sent me photos. Him with Clara at a bar, their heads close. Him leaving his loft at odd hours. One shot showed Clara slipping out at dawn, her hair messy, her face guilty. I stared at that photo for hours, not in pain, but in resolve. This wasn't just about her anymore. Julian would pay too. I started weaving him into my trap. I created a fake client profile, contacting him for a photo shoot, offering a big budget. He bit, eager for the cash. I set the meeting for a date I knew Clara would be at the gallery, ensuring she'd hear about it later. The client would vanish, leaving Julian embarrassed, his reputation dented. Small but satisfying. At home, I left one final clue. A printout of Julian's scarf photo, slipped into her portfolio. She found it that night, her gasp audible from the kitchen. "Dan?" she called, her voice trembling. I walked in, innocent. "What's wrong?" She held the paper, eyes wide. "Nothing," she whispered, crumpling it. I smiled, knowing the real revenge was coming. A structure so precise it would bury them both. Clara's gallery show was 3 weeks away, and I could see her fraying like a rope under too much strain. She'd spend hours at her studio, but her sketches lacked the fire they once had, as if Julian's influence had drained her. I'd watch her at breakfast, her hands trembling as she sipped coffee, her phone silent now. Julian's texts had slowed, I noticed, thanks to Mara's reports. My investigator had become my eyes, feeding me details. Julian was distracted, taking on risky projects, his arrogance blinding him to the trap I was building. I intensified my sabotage of Clara's exhibit. Using a burner email, I sent the curator more evidence of her work's similarities to Julian's, including side-by-side images I doctored subtly. Her sketches tweaked to mimic his photos. The curator's replies grew colder, hinting at a review board meeting. Clara came home one night, eyes red, saying the gallery was reconsidering her show. "They think I'm a fraud," she whispered, her voice breaking. I hugged her, murmuring comfort, but inside, I felt a dark satisfaction. This was only the beginning. I also targeted her confidence directly. I'd leave art magazines open to articles about plagiarism, casually mention local artists who'd been shamed for borrowing ideas. Her flinches were delicious, her paranoia growing. Once, I overheard her on the phone with Julian, hissing, "They're onto us. We need to stop." His reply was inaudible, but her silence afterward told me he didn't care. Good. I wanted him reckless, exposed. At home, I kept up the facade of the perfect husband. I helped Ethan with math homework, braided Lila's hair, cooked Clara's favorite risotto. But I'd slip in needles. A comment about trust, a question about her late nights. She'd deflect, but her eyes betrayed her. Guilt, fear, and something new, suspicion. She was starting to wonder if I knew, and that uncertainty was my weapon. I met Mara in a diner to plan the next phase. She slid me a folder, bank records showing Julian's debts, emails proving he'd used Clara's designs without credit. "He's a leech," Mara said. "She's not his first muse." I nodded, my mind racing. Julian's downfall would be public, humiliating, but Clara's would be personal. I'd make her see herself as I did, betrayed, diminished, alone. Julian's fake photo shoot was set for a Friday, and I orchestrated it like a symphony. My client, a front I'd paid Mara to play, lured him to a rented studio with promises of a high-profile campaign. I ensured the setup was lavish, expensive lighting, a rented vintage car as a prop, details to inflate his ego. Mara reported he arrived cocky, barking orders at the crew I'd hired. But the client never showed. The crew, instructed to waste his time, dragged the session out for hours before packing up, leaving Julian fuming, unpaid, and humiliated. I tipped off a local art blogger, anonymously, about Julian's failed shoot, suggesting he was unreliable. The post went live that night, subtle but biting, hinting at his financial troubles. I knew Clara would see it. She followed the blog religiously. When she came home, her face was ashen. "Julian's in trouble," she muttered, thinking I didn't hear. I stirred my tea, hiding my smirk. Let her worry about her lover's crumbling world. I doubled down on Julian's ruin. Using another fake profile, I booked him for overlapping gigs, ensuring he'd miss deadlines. Mara fed me his schedule, and I sent cryptic messages to his clients, hinting at his creative struggles. His online reviews began to sour, his bookings dried up. I wanted him desperate, isolated, so when Clara turned to him for comfort, he'd have nothing to offer. At home, I planted a new clue, a printed email from Julian to Clara, one I'd hacked from her account, where he called her my muse, my everything. I left it in her car, folded inside a grocery list. She found it that evening, her gasp sharp as she shoved it into her purse. I watched from the kitchen, pretending to chop onions. Her panic was palpable, her trust in her own secrecy crumbling. That night, I lay beside her, her breathing uneven. I wondered if she dreamed of Julian, of their stolen moments. I didn't care anymore. My love for her had hardened into something sharper, a tool for justice. The kids slept down the hall, unaware, and I vowed they'd never know their mother's shame. My revenge would be surgical, sparing them, destroying only her and him. The gallery show was a week away, and Clara was a ghost of herself. She'd lost weight, her cheekbones sharp, her eyes shadowed. The curator had formally questioned her work's originality, demanding a meeting with her and Julian. I'd orchestrated this, my emails to the curator now backed by leaked chats I'd fabricated, showing Clara and Julian plotting to blend their styles. The art community was buzzing, whispers of scandal spreading. I attended the gallery's preview night, posing as a curious patron. Clara was there, forcing smiles, her voice brittle as she explained her sketches to guests. Julian stood across the room, unaware I was watching, his charm strained as he dodged questions about his own work. I overheard a critic murmur, "Her pieces feel derivative, too much like that photographer's." Clara's face froze, and I sipped my wine, savoring the moment. I'd paid a hacker to dig into Julian's past, uncovering a trail of jilted collaborators, all women, all used for his gain. I sent the details to the same art blogger, who published a scathing exposé the next day. Julian Hart? Talent or thief? It named Clara as his latest victim, twisting the knife. She read it at breakfast, her phone slipping from her hand. "This is a lie," she whispered, but her voice lacked conviction. I kept my distance, letting the scandal do its work. Friends texted her, asking if she was okay, their pity cutting deeper than scorn. She stopped going to her studio, her sketches untouched. I'd hear her crying in the bathroom, thinking I was asleep. I felt no guilt, only purpose. She'd chosen this path, built this lie with Julian. Now she'd live its consequences. I planned the final blow for the gallery opening. I'd expose them both, not with confrontation, but with art, her art, twisted to tell the truth. I'd been collecting her discarded sketches, the ones from her inspo folder, and I had an idea, something cruelly poetic. It would be my masterpiece, her shame framed for all to see. Ethan and Lila were my anchor, the only pure thing left. At 10 and 7, they sensed Clara's distance but didn't understand it. Ethan asked why Mom's so sad, And I lied, saying she was stressed about work. Lila drew her pictures, taping them to Clara's sketchbook, but Clara barely noticed. It enraged me, not just her betrayal, but her neglect. She was unraveling, and the kids were collateral damage. I shielded them, keeping their routine steady. Soccer practice, bedtime stories, pancake Sundays. But I watched Clara with them, her hugs distracted, her laughter forced. Once, Lila asked if Mommy was going away, and Clara's eyes welled up. "No, sweetie," she said, but I saw the lie. She was already gone, lost in her guilt and Julian's world. I used the kids to tighten the noose subtly. I'd ask Clara to join us for movie nights, knowing she'd decline, her excuses piling up. Ethan stopped asking her to play board games, his disappointment a silent accusation. I didn't push. I let her absence speak for itself. When she did engage, I'd mention Julian casually. "Heard he's struggling. Tough for collaborators." Huh? Watching her squirm. I protected the kids from my revenge, ensuring no hint of it reached them. Mara's reports, my hacked emails, the gallery sabotage, all stayed locked in my study. But I taught them resilience subtly. "People make mistakes," I told Ethan during a hike. "But trust is hard to rebuild." He nodded, not understanding, but the lesson would stick. My final plan was taking shape, a public shaming that would spare the kids. I'd make Clara face her choices, not as a mother, but as an artist and a wife. Julian would collapse under his own weight, but Clara's fall would be mine to design, a mirror to her betrayal. The night before the gallery opening, Clara was a wreck. She barely ate, her hands fidgeting as she packed her portfolio. The curator had warned her. The show was her chance to prove her integrity. I knew she wouldn't. I'd sent the curator one last email, attaching a manipulated sketch, Clara's work overlaid with Julian's signature, undeniable proof of theft. The board was meeting post-show to decide her fate. I'd finished my own project, a digital collage of Clara's inspo photos, her intimate moments with Julian, layered with her sketches. It wasn't explicit, but suggestive, a story of betrayal told in shadows and poses. I'd hacked the gallery's projector system, thanks to a contact from my engineering days, ensuring my collage would play during her speech. The audience, critics, friends, clients would see her truth. Julian was crumbling too. Mara reported he'd lost 2 major clients, his debts mounting. I'd sent him a fake job offer, a lifeline he'd chased, only to find it was a scam. He was drinking heavily, she said, snapping at Clara when they met. Their alliance was fracturing just as I'd planned. That night, Clara sat on our couch, staring at nothing. "Dan," she said, her voice small, "do you still love me?" I looked at her, seeing the woman I'd married, now a stranger. "Always." I lied, my voice steady. She nodded, tears falling, unaware that tomorrow, I'd dismantle her world. I went to bed, my plan complete. The gallery would be her stage, my revenge her spotlight. She'd built this with Julian, but I'd tear it down, piece by cruel piece, until she had nothing left but the truth. The gallery opening was a sea of wine glasses and forced smiles, the air thick with anticipation and judgment. Clara stood by her display, her sketches framed under harsh lights, her face a mask of brittle confidence. I mingled, anonymous in my suit, watching critics murmur about the controversy my emails had stirred. Julian was there, cornered by a reporter, his charm fraying as he dodged questions about his exposé. I savored their discomfort, my pulse steady, my plan primed. Clara's speech was scheduled after the curator's welcome. As she took the stage, her voice trembled, praising her unique vision. I slipped to the back, where my tech contact had rigged the projector. With a single click, my collage began. Silent at first, a slideshow of Clara's inspo photos, her with Julian, their intimate poses, her sketches layered over his work. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Clara froze, her eyes locking on the screen, her words dying. The images shifted, revealing manipulated sketches I'd planted, her signature blurred with Julian's. Critics whispered, phones flashed, recording her shame. Julian pushed through the crowd, his face red, shouting, "This is a setup," but the damage was done. Clara's legs buckled. She gripped the podium, her eyes finding mine in the crowd. I held her gaze, unyielding, letting her see my hand in this. The curator stormed the stage, cutting the projector, but the room was alive with scandal. Guests left, muttering about plagiarism, betrayal. Clara stood alone, her portfolio untouched, her reputation in ruins. Julian vanished, likely to salvage his own name, but I knew his debts and disgrace would follow him. I left without a word, my revenge a perfect structure, collapsing exactly as designed. At home I waited. Clara didn't return until dawn, her face swollen from crying. "Why?" she whispered, seeing me in the kitchen. I didn't answer, just poured coffee, my silence louder than any accusation. She knew I'd orchestrated it, but she couldn't prove it. That was my power, her guilt, my precision, our marriage now a hollow shell. The days after the gallery were quiet, heavy. Clara moved through the house like a ghost, avoiding my eyes, her sketchbooks closed. The kids noticed, asking why Mommy was so quiet. I deflected, keeping their world intact, but my heart ached for them. Clara's betrayal had cost her more than me. It had dimmed her light, the one Ethan and Lila needed. I hated her for that, more than for Julian. The art world didn't forget. Blogs dissected the scandal, labeling Clara a copycat and Julian a predator. Her clients dropped her, the gallery blacklisted her. She tried to work, but her hands shook, her lines unsteady. I watched, detached, my revenge complete but not satisfying. I'd wanted her to hurt, but this emptiness wasn't victory. It was just loss. I kept tabs on Julian through Mara. He'd fled Portland, his loft foreclosed, his name toxic. I'd sent one last anonymous tip, linking his debts to a loan shark. Mara said he was hiding in Seattle, scraping by. I didn't care enough to pursue him further. He was a footnote, his role in my pain reduced to ash. Clara tried to talk once, late at night. "I didn't mean to hurt you," she said, her voice raw. "Julian was a mistake." I looked at her, seeing not my wife, but a stranger who'd traded our life for a fleeting muse. "You chose him," I said, my voice cold. "Live with it." She sobbed, but I walked away, my heart sealed shut. I focused on the kids, planning a future without her shadow. My revenge had been cruel, yes, but necessary. She'd broken us, and I'd made her pay. Now I had to rebuild, for Ethan, for Lila, for me. A week later, Clara broke. She sat me down, her hands clasped, her eyes hollow. "I need to tell you everything," she said, her voice barely audible. I nodded, not because I wanted her truth, but because I wanted her to choke on it. She spoke of Julian, their collaboration turning into something deeper, an affair of ideas, not just bodies. "He saw my art in a way you never did," she said, then flinched, realizing her cruelty. She described their late-night shoots, their shared vision, how she'd felt alive, unburdened. "I didn't plan it," she whispered, "but I couldn't stop." I listened, my face stone, remembering every photo, every lie. She didn't know I'd seen it all, that her confession was redundant. When she finished, she begged for forgiveness, for a chance to fix us. I stood, towering over her. "You didn't just betray me," I said. "You betrayed them." I pointed to the kids' rooms where Ethan and Lila slept. "You don't get to fix this." Her sobs followed me as I left the room, but I felt no pity. Her confession was her final surrender, and I'd won. I didn't tell her about my revenge, the emails, the collage, the sabotage. Let her think the world had turned on her naturally. That was my cruelty, her ignorance of my hand, her belief in her own failure. I slept soundly that night, my plan's weight lifted, replaced by clarity. Our marriage was over, but I'd protect what mattered. The next day, I contacted a lawyer, quietly preparing. I'd ensure the kids stayed with me, that Clara's instability wouldn't touch them. She'd have her freedom, but nothing else. My revenge wasn't done. It would live in every choice she made, every mirror she faced. I didn't divorce Clara immediately. I wanted her to feel the slow bleed of consequences. I moved into the guest room, our interactions formal, transactional. The kids adapted, sensing the shift but shielded by my stability. Clara tried to reconnect with them, but her guilt made her clumsy, her hugs too tight. Ethan pulled away, Lila grew quiet, and I let it happen, knowing her absence was her punishment. I sold the house, claiming financial strain, forcing Clara to confront our fractured life. We moved to a smaller place, her studio reduced to a corner desk. Her sketches stopped entirely. She took a job designing logos, soulless work that mocked her dreams. I watched her shrink, not with joy, but with grim resolve. She'd chosen Julian's world. Now she'd live without hers. I ensured Julian's ruin was permanent. Mara's final report confirmed he'd been evicted, his equipment seized. I sent one last anonymous package to his new address. A print of Clara's scarf photo, no note. Let him wonder, let him fear. He'd never know it was me, but he'd carry the weight as Clara did. My revenge extended to Clara's legacy. I donated her old sketches to a local school, credited to Anonymous, erasing her name. Her art, once her soul, was now a ghost, unclaimed. She found out, her eyes dull with defeat, but said nothing. I'd stripped her of everything, her passion, her pride, her place in our family. Yet I wasn't unscathed. Late at night, I'd traced the cracks in my own heart, wondering if I'd gone too far. But then I'd see Ethan's smile, Lila's drawings, and know I'd done it for them. Clara's betrayal had forced my hand, and I'd built a reckoning she'd never forget. A year later, I stood in a new city, Seattle, with Ethan and Lila. The divorce was final, custody mine. Clara a weekend visitor when she could manage. She lived in a cramped apartment, her life small, her eyes empty when she hugged the kids goodbye. I didn't gloat. I didn't need to. My revenge had been a slow, cruel tide, washing away her world while I rebuilt mine. The kids thrived, their laughter my foundation. I dated again, cautiously, a woman named Sarah who loved bridges and bad puns. She didn't replace Clara, but she didn't need to. My life was mine now, not defined by betrayal. I still worked as an engineer, designing structures stronger than before, each beam a testament to my resilience. Clara wrote me once, a letter full of apologies, promises to change. I burned it unopened. She'd had her chance and I'd had mine, to make her feel the depth of her choices. Julian was a rumor, his name faded, his life irrelevant. I didn't care where he was. He'd been a catalyst, nothing more. Sometimes, I'd catch Lila drawing, her lines bold like Clara's once were. I'd smile, knowing I'd protected her light, Ethan's too. My revenge was cruel, yes, but it was justice, a balance restored. I looked at the horizon, my kids beside me, and saw a future uncracked, unyielding, mine to build.